It's the equipment cooler.
That's neat.
Calling to order the January 13, 2020 Chaska Park Board meeting. Mary, roll call.
Chair Dave Roan.
Here.
Vice Chair Jason Branch.
Here.
David Downs.
Here.
Josh Ives.
Here.
Ernesto Gutierrez.
Here.
Matt Uderman.
Here.
Elizabeth Whiting.
Here.
All right, item number 2. So that was roll call. So number 2. Number 3 is to adopt the agenda. And assuming we've all had an opportunity to take a look at that agenda, I will accept a motion.
I move to.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner Uderman, a secondman from Dave. And any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 4, visitor presentation. It does not appear that we have a visitor here today, and so we will go ahead and close out of the visitor presentation and move on to item number 5, which is to approve previous meeting minutes. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look at our meeting minutes, which would be from our meeting on December 9th. Were there any corrections, changes, comments on the meeting minutes from our last park board meeting? All right, I'll accept a motion to approve those.
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All right, second branch. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so that moves us to item number 6, which is to receive council and planning meeting minutes. So we've got council minutes from December 2nd and December 16th, and then we also have the planning commission minutes from December 13th. Were there any items from those minutes that you ran through that you have any questions, comments?
Nope.
Discussion item? I did not see anything as well, and so no motion required on receiving those minutes, and so that moves us right on down to action items, which is our number 7, and we start with the nominations for Park Board Chair and Vice Chair and Director Grange.
Good evening, Chair and Commission members. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday season with family and friends, and ready for a great 2020 in a new year. So before we jump into the nominations, I just thought I'd give a quick update with the essentially the other applicants that are wanting to come onto the park board. So we received some applications. The city council conducted interviews at their previous city council meeting, and then they'll be finishing up interviews at their next meeting on the 27th. And it's my understanding, as a part of their regular meeting, they'll make decisions on who will then be joining us on the park board. So we'll be welcoming some new park board members at our February meeting. As you recall, Pat Wittrock and Sean Olson completed their kind of the longevity of their 3 consecutive terms. And then we had 2 other commission members that were due to reapply after finishing their first 3-year term. Lauren Mikhailov has decided not to reapply just due to work commitments. So wanted to go on record and just thank her for her 3 years of service on the park board and all of the input and ideas she brought to the table. And then Vince, our youth representative, has reapplied, and so he's going through that process. So just want to make you all aware of where that all stood. But then every year, it's the park board's responsibility to make a recommendation to the city council as to who will serve as the chair and vice chair. So that's what we need to take care of in our next action item. So let's start out with the Park Board Chair, and just start off by saying that any one of you can express individual interest, or one of you can make a nomination for another to serve as our Park Board Chair for 2020.
I would like to nominate Dave Roan for another term as chairman. I think he has a lot of background and has been through a lot of the major changes that we've been involved with. I think he's done a good job. Thanks.
Great. So we have a nomination for Dave Roan to serve as chair. Are there any others? If not, I would entertain a second motion for Dave to be nominated as the chair.
I second Dave.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Dave?
Yeah.
You got me.
Great. All right, so moved. So we will make that recommendation to City Council for Commissioner Roan to serve another year as chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I will now turn it over to Chair Roan to go through the process for our next action item on the vice chair.
Right, and so for the vice chair, Park Board is same process. We can make nomination, and having had Jason serve as vice chair this previous year, I would like to go ahead and renominate him to serve again this coming year as vice chair. And of course, welcome any of you that would want to make a nomination for someone else to feel free to do so now. Do we have a second in nominating
I second.
Jason? Okay, we have a second from Uterman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
This is pending a physical, right?
Background check. No, did Jason step into the role in the past year? You know, filling in for you ever?
I didn't miss any meetings, so,
It's the best type of
But,
vice chair.
yeah,
Well, there's always a chance every year.
There it is.
that's right. Least expect, I'll give you some heads up. All right, well, congratulations. All right, so that closes out item number 7 for the action items. And moving us on to item 8 for old business. And starting out with 8A, which is the bicycle-friendly community project, Director Grange.
All right, thank you. So pretty straightforward agenda tonight, just given the holiday season, but definitely wanted to just keep the commission in the know on some of these projects that are just going to be ongoing for quite a while. So as it relates to the bicycle-friendly community project, really what's currently going on is throughout this month of January, we've charged several of the small groups that have been formed as part of this project to go ahead and meet on their own and continue to discuss some of the ideas that they had generated in previous meetings, along with the recommendations that were provided to us in the assessment report from BICOM-Ed, and to just begin prioritizing what those projects might be. And I've given the direction that, to initially look at sort of that low-hanging fruit. What are the real kind of feasible things that we can accomplish within the next year? With that idea of being able to, put our best foot forward when we make our initial application to see where we're at as a city in terms of being designated as a bicycle-friendly community. Because there's a pretty lengthy list of ideas and projects that, to implement them all is going to be several years. So I think kind of right now it's more of that exercise of prioritizing and letting those small groups come together and do that. And then we have a meeting that we're looking to set up on February 19th. And we'll then invite everybody to come back, have those small groups report back to the big group, share kind of what they discussed in their January meetings, to be able to get feedback from the larger group and then just continue working towards those different projects there forward. And so some of the things I'm also looking at that are a little bit outside of the specific groups that were formed, which those essentially were formed around the different E categories that are part of the bicycle-friendly application. If you recall, those were like engineering, education, evaluation, enforcement, and encouragement. And so those kind of are the representations of the small groups. And so there's about 3 to 4 people that are in each of those small groups. Most of them consist of a city staff within each of the groups, and then various people from the business and community being a part of those small groups. One thing I want to look into on our end as well is kind of in addition to a bicycle-friendly community designation, there's also what's called a bicycle-friendly business designation. And then they also have a bicycle-friendly university designation. But as it relates to the business designation, we as a city of Chaska can apply for that designation just as a government agency. And so I want to explore what that would entail. I know just by looking online that it's not as robust of an application or a process as the larger community umbrella. But to me, if we're going to represent the community, getting the designation, I want to make sure we're doing it. We're kind of walking the walk within our own organization and understanding what we can do even as an employer to be more bicycle friendly. So I'll be looking at that as well. Any questions or thoughts on the bicycle-friendly community project?
I got a question. How is that progress and what's going on reported out? So specifically, so the community can be aware of the progress we're making and where we're going and things, to add a little knowledge and encouragement to the community that we're going in the right direction?
Yep, good question. So, to some extent, that's what this is, getting, me coming back and giving updates. But I think as we start to identify more specifically what the projects that we're going to be doing, we'll want to get that out to the community via website, social media. There could be even other ways to get more community involvement.
Are there going to
as
be
we go.
minutes to some of the meetings that would be available to the public as well? Like you said, all these, small groups are going to report out, and
Yeah.
the larger group, is there going to be some minutes of that meeting that'll be posted?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly do that. Maybe we create some sort of a project page on our website,
Something that, that,
continually to update over time.
yeah, so that, you can gain some support from the community and, spark some interest in the community that this is coming and this is a good deal for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea.
That's a good idea, Dave, and I know that, having broken out into the smaller groups, we've also assigned an individual inside the smaller groups to kind of serve as the leader of that group. And so it seems to me like at the end of every meeting, they could even do some sort of a recap that could get combined into a document that would serve as minutes from that meeting. Because the small groups meet together as a part of the larger meeting.
Yeah, you don't want it to become really burdensome for everybody and, and doing just reports, to do reports. But, every once in a while, I would think, when you think that it's apropos, is you put something out, that says, yep, we're making progress, this is what we've done, this is where we're going, everything's hunky-dory and everything's gonna be wonderful.
Sure. I'd like to think that the small groups could probably summarize what they're working on pretty quickly and easily without it getting into something that becomes, a chore for them. So, but I think that would be a good way to communicate it out.
Yeah, I mean, and, I think we have really great representation on the committee for the community, but you're right, and then, the more we can continue to get that message out and what we're working on and get even more people behind it will be good. So,
Marshall, could you please remind me when you plan on submitting the application again for the designation?
yeah, so there's really two times a year in which they accept those applications, and I believe it's August or February. And so
I'm assuming we wouldn't be ready this February.
No. And I'm anticipating, we probably want to actually be looking at the following year, February.
Okay.
Just realistically, as we get going in, we're already be hitting February, March, and there's going to be quite a bit of a process just filling out this application. I think it's about 185 questions. There's some pretty in-depth things we need to answer. In August in the Parks and Recreation world is a very busy time of year for us.
Sure.
So thinking about like June and July when we would be trying to put the content together for that application, realistically, I'm going to be suggesting that we look at February as the date when we submit our application, which will just give us a little bit more time to implement some of the ideas.
You're saying a year from next month?
Yep. Yeah. Anything else? No?
All right, so with that, we're moving on to item 8B for the mountain bike trail project.
Yeah, so with that, I think the last update I had shared that we had worked with the county as it relates to defining the easement with some of the kind of land that's being deeded over adjacent to the roads. And originally, the agreement came to us and the city of Chanhassen, and that easement was defined as 65 feet from the center line of the road. And so we just wanted to better understand what that looked like. So myself and Tim Vosberg from the Carver Trails Group, along with Dan McCormick, who is the traffic engineer with Carver County, and then a Carver County land surveyor, we all met out on the site and walked the property and came to the conclusion that there were definitely some areas where that would pose some challenges and how we would want to ideally lay out the trails. And so we worked with the county to essentially gain another 10 feet of that easement to give us a little more room to lay out those trails. So with that, they're just having to go back and rewrite some of the explanations within that agreement. It's my understanding that our respective cities' attorneys recently received those. So I'll be following up with them within a matter of days to just start understanding and mapping out what our next steps are, which ultimately we'll be just bringing that specific agreement back to our city council. They've already, have been made aware of this site and the project as a whole, but this is just a level of detail, especially as it relates into the area that was it's property owned by MnDOT, in which we received the limited use permit to put the trails in, but within that land there was some specific area along the road that was still Carver County that they're deeding over to us to give us access for that trail layout. Once we do that, then I'll coordinate with the city of Chanhassen, because there is another piece of that land as part of the project site that Carver County is conveying over to Chanhassen. And so they still need to go through their approval process once we've finalized ours to accept that land conveyance. And then additionally, there's a three-way memorandum of understanding agreement that we need to get approved, which is essentially tying the city of Chaska to the city of Chanhassen to the Carver Trails group. So we're all understanding kind of the roles and responsibilities of that property. So we're getting there. You know, I feel like we should be getting these approvals done yet this winter, and then we'll be in a spot once spring comes and they can get back out on that property. We can start working with the Carver Trails group to lay out those trails this spring, which will be very exciting.
I did one question, Marshall, on that one. This has been quite the process, and those guys, they've been doing a fabulous job just sticking with it. As far as when everything, all the paperwork, everything is done, how long again before anything has to be? Is it a 10-year term that for land use? Is it, you know, before any of this would have to, you know, be regurgitated and gotten through again? Or is that, once it's
Good
set,
question.
that's
Yeah.
going to be a bike path forever, or?
Yep, so with MnDOT, it's a 10-year limited use permit.
Okay.
But then there is the ability to essentially re-extend it
And that would be
without
a
having to
lot-
go through
A lot less
all this
painstaking
process.
than-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Yeah, give those guys a pat on the back for me, if you would.
yeah, the Carver Trails Group? Yeah,
Those guys,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yep.
It's really good to see.
Well, everybody involved. It's been, you
Everybody
know,
involved, yeah.
it's been slow process, but it's been steady progress.
Is
So-
it going on 2 years this spring? Is that, my timeline off?
Pretty close, about a year and a half, yeah. And so, I mean, it's been a good learning process for me as well, and I think it's, to some degree, you know, it's involved a lot of multiple agencies, and when you start getting into the, you know, legalities and things like that, it just takes time, and, you know, and quite frankly, it's a small project for a lot of these other agencies, you know, and I kind of equate it to when we do a project at home, you know, sometimes the smallest ones are the the most expensive and or the most difficult, you know, there's more detail.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Marshall. Moving on to item number 9 of other business, 9A staff reports.
Yeah, so just pulling out some of the department happenings that staff submit. This past weekend, we hosted the Big Spiel, a big bond spiel that involved numerous teams from out of state that come into the Twin Cities, and essentially it's a bond spiel curling tournament that involves 4 different curling clubs in the metro area, and so they all get the opportunity to curl at each one of the sites, and so it's kind of a weekend-long deal that I think it's a 4th or 5th year that they've been doing it, so it's quite a popular bond spiel. And then we also hosted our Big Chill community event, winter event, and that staff tried something a little different. Typically, we've hosted that in early February on a Friday in the evening. And so tried to look at partnering it with the Big Chill and doing it. We hosted it on Saturday afternoon. You know, I think it was a pretty good turnout. I believe it was estimated about 100 people from the community came out to enjoy the festivities. You got to brave the elements, because Saturday was cold and it was windy.
Yeah.
So that's an event that, you know, you never know what you're going to get, you know, with a winter event like that. Looking ahead, on Friday, January 24th, we are doing a program at the Chaska Event Center in coordination with Crooked Pint Ale House. It is going to be a superhero family dance, so check that out. There is a registration fee. It's $15, but it includes dinner and dancing and some fun activities. The lodge is going to be partnering again with the curling center later this month for the active older adults to do a learn to curl down at the curling and events center. And then looking ahead, currently, actually, we're accounting for some transition in our staff. As you recall, I shared with you that our maintenance manager, Ron Piper, retired, and so we're currently underway with interviewing to replace that position, which is now going to be a facility supervisor position that's going to be reporting into Kelsey, who is our community center manager. And then in addition to that, we're also seeking a ice arena coordinator, ice arena and operations coordinator. And so we had good application pool for those. I think we ended up with about 40 to 50 applicants for each of those positions, including out-of-state applicants, I think for both of them. Initial phone interviews were conducted just this last Friday. We've narrowed it down to 5 individuals each, and I believe on Thursday we'll be conducting our first round of in-person interviews. So looking forward to adding those positions to our team.
Marshall, are any of those 5 internal?
Yes, there's internal candidates currently for both of those positions. Yep. Let's see here. I'd like to also point out, make you aware that we've been approached by Southwest Christian High School, their hockey program specifically, and just exploring what it may look like to have some more ice time and presence at the City of Chaska's ice arena within the community center. So we're having some of those conversations and trying to figure out what that might look like. To be real honest, it's a challenge because we are pretty much at capacity as it relates to our ice time. So it really comes down to discussions with our existing user groups and getting an understanding of what that comfort level is and what type of flexibility there may be. In addition to also looking at some of our own internal programming that we do within the ice arena, and maybe even just looking at kind of how we're scheduling things to see if we can get a little more creative in coming up with some more time. So.
What facilities do they currently use?
So they currently, their program is co-opted with Richfield, and so they're using a combination of facility at Richfield. They utilize some ice time over at Shakopee. They utilize some ice time over in Victoria, and then they do use some ice time with us as well. You know, I think it's just with that they're all over the place, and so their ideal would be to centralize a little more if they could. And so we're just trying to see what that might look like. And then lastly, I'll just share that within the curling center, the Winter 2 session leagues are up and running. So we had a really good Winter 1 session, and now Winter 2 is underway. Lots of good activity going on.
All right,
all I
and
have.
that
Thank you.
takes us to item 9C. So we're already at the roundtable. This is going to be one of our shorter meetings. And Commissioner Weinveen, did you have anything on your mind?
No, just want to wish everyone a happy new year and hope 2020 is off to a great start for everybody.
Thank you. Commissioner Ives.
I just had a question about your new your upgraded fitness area.
Yeah.
And I've seen it finished, but I haven't, spoken to anybody about their opinions on, what they like, dislike about it. Have you received any general feedback from users?
Yeah, the general feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. People just love the equipment within it. The fact this is, you know, we changed out the lighting, so it's much brighter. It's just a little bit, it feels a little more like an extension of the other fitness center. But yeah, you know, just by walking around, you can tell it's getting used a lot more than what was there before, so. And quite a few people took advantage of, you know, when we first unveiled it after Thanksgiving. Missy Goff, our fitness supervisor, had her personal trainers there during peak times, and were able to show people, you know, how to use the various equipment. And, you know, I think there were some that were a little, you know, hesitant to that change, that I think by taking that time to visit with a trainer and essentially just trying to understand, okay, I used to do this with that other equipment, and how do I do some of those same movements with this new equipment? And they were able to help them with that. But also even explain the benefits that it's actually a good thing to change up your routine. You know, oftentimes people do the same thing, but it's good to mix it up from a fitness perspective.
I also heard the tapes that some of the classes have made have been really well received by people, that if they can't make spin class, there's a DVD of the class and they can check that out and use it. And
Yeah,
that's
so
been
we've essentially recorded some of our own instructors teaching a format of a class. And so then outside of our scheduled classes, if you would like, you can pop in that DVD and essentially take a spin class. So it's kind of our own version of the Peloton.
I like it. Yeah.
It's good.
Commissioner
Nothing
Branch?
for me,
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
for me this week.
Commissioner Downs?
No, I'd like to say too that, you know, Lauren, I thought, did a great job while she was here, and we should do something in the minutes certainly to thank her formally, because she was a great contributor.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Commissioner Uterman?
So a handful of things. One, a couple questions popped up if there's any access to snowshoes in Chaska. I know it's expensive and but my assumption was there is not.
Not that I'm aware
Okay.
of. Nope.
Send them to the
Is there?
Arboretum.
I thought Carver,
Yeah, for
Carver
some
County?
yeah,
I
Carver
think
County does rentals.
to like the nature center.
Okay, good.
Yeah, 'cause
Just
we're-
wanted to make
we're-
sure we knew that one. And then once in a while, you stumble upon a name or two that come up for future parks. I stumbled upon Alfalfa Park because I had a chance to talk to fifth-generation farmer Steve Kelzer. And there's a lot of things named Kelzer around here. And the reason for that is because their family was part of the alfalfa crop that Chaska was known for back in like 1820. And Clover Ridge supposedly is partially named because of the alfalfa crop, but clover sounded better than alfalfa, so they went with clover.
Okay.
And so as I was talking to Steve, he was like, you know, it's not clover, it's alfalfa. And I was like, man, that might be an interesting name to percolate. And then I looked at the spelling, and I had to spell check it, but it's like Alf, A. Because I know, literally, Alf, A, alfalfa. I don't know how to spell. But I know when we talked about Schimmelpfennig parks and other parks, part of the consideration is it easy enough to spell or Google to get there. And so there was historic significance. Got a couple parks coming up. It's not a name, but it is part of our history. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The other thing is maintenance and staff. I guess I'm a little bit more tuned in now that I'm on Park Board, how clean our facilities are, especially during the midst of crazy hockey season where kids are coming in and out and all that stuff that's going. I know we have a major change with a gentleman that's been here for 30 years and his time, but the care and cleanliness of the community center with all the snow and salt and everything we've got. Some people don't get out of Chaska, but I see other facilities as well, and we're probably one of the best. And so it's probably worth noting that the staff's doing a great job with the cleanliness and care of the facility. Also, I wanted to share that we're taking a page out of the Park Board's book with a student representative. I also serve on the Carver County Library Board, and so as inspiration from this group, we're trying to replicate that student representation with other committees within the city and county. And it's a result of having worked next to Vince and see what we're doing with the student. And I know there's logistical complexities when somebody's in school and they can't always make every meeting, but the input from Vince is different than the input that we get from anybody else on this board, which I think is fantastic. So I wanted to share that. Park RX is near and dear to my heart because I think it's 3 times a day or 3 times a week, 30 minutes per time. Working out is really good for mental health. It's worth for physicalities and other things. I've spoke to physicians, parents, teachers, neighbors, business owners, healthcare providers, counselors, employers, and potential businesses about this potential of Park RX and prescriptions. Unequivocally, everybody is in support of it and thinks it's fantastic to get kids out to work, and then it also creates an appreciation for the parks and trails that we have here. And then 2 more things. Kaylee Van Epps and Mallory Heyer. Sometimes women's sports programs get overshadowed, especially when we bring a state championship to town. But on January 8th, Kaylee Van Epps and Mallory Heyer both scored their 1,000th point for City of Chaska. So it's a chance for us to be really proud of the girls program. And those 2 gals have probably worked out endless hours at the community center and within our facilities to help to get to 1,000 points. And they're not even seniors.
So I actually witnessed that game. So as you know, or I'll share with you, I live in the city of Lakeville. My daughter plays basketball, and they were playing Lakeville that particular game when they each scored the 1,000th point, which was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're not even seniors.
And they're such a great representative of the community. They're good people, and I think their speeches afterwards where it doesn't happen without a full team, so I thought that was great. And then speaking of team, we are the Park and Rec Board, but our peer group is in the Human Rights Commission. On the 20th from 8 to 9 a.m., it's a Monday at Chaska Event Center, is MLK Human Rights Breakfast. And it's a good event that they plan every year. That's an outreach piece, and our peer group, the Human Rights Commission, has a big hand in making that happen. So I wanted to call that out.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Gutierrez.
I don't have nothing today.
Nothing, okay. All right, so in finishing up here, I'd like to say that I'm delighted to see that we're going to have our student representative, Vincent Kim, back. And much like yourself, I just think his input's been just a real breath of fresh air for this commission. And so, again, delighted to have him back. And I'd also like to echo your thoughts, Dave, on Lauren Mihailev's contributions to this commission. And we're going to miss her. She was very valuable, and her perspectives were very helpful in helping us evaluate some of the opportunities that we are, constantly having flowing in here. And so just wanted to publicly say, thanks, Lauren, and you're always welcome to come in and visit us anytime. So that's all I've got. And so that moves us on to item number 10, unless Mary or Marshall, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'll just mention that in February to anticipate us having a work session prior to that meeting, and so I'll email that out. I'd like to take that opportunity to welcome the incoming new park board members. But my other intent is just to sort of set up the plan for the year and to share some of the bigger community projects that are going to be coming ahead, in addition to inviting Public Works to that work session as well, so they can share what's been approved in terms of capital improvement projects out in the parks and trails for this coming year, so we all are aware of those projects going forward. So that'll happen in February before our regular meeting.
Can I ask a question about future projects too?
Yeah.
I know the one new park has been delayed because the school hasn't been funded.
Mm-hmm.
But the park that's in that same general area, that's the neighborhood park,
Yep.
is there a plan laid out on when we're gonna start, taking a serious look at what that park is gonna consist of and the plans for that?
Yeah, we're not quite there yet on like what the specifics will be in there. We've had some initial discussions, with architectural consulting group, and I think where it's currently at is we need to still define essentially some of the shape of the park, especially as it relates to the north and the layout of the development. Just because we think that there's some really key advantages to connecting the northern end of that park up to Creek Road. And so there's still some discussions kind of in the community development department with the developer, and so I think we still gotta flesh that out a little bit before we can come back and have more of those discussions about what the park's gonna be. But it'll be on the horizon for sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hearing no other comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, Commissioner Ives, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Downs, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned.